Well, good afternoon. Welcome for the second episode of Deadline. I'm your host, Poochie Hill. Have the Honorable Sharpe James here, and we have Bishop Jepthro James here. We're going to continue on now in the aspect of speaking about some of the historical architectural buildings and families that are very monumental and most prevalent in the city of Newark that a lot of the young people might not know of that are still here and that could be influential, and it's good to know who has come from your town to make you understand just how important the third oldest city in America is where you come from, which we call Brick City or Newark, New Jersey. Your Honor, would you give us some history on the Riviera Hotel?
Well, the history is that Sharpe graduated, lived in the Valley, it was called the Valley, graduated Miller Street School, Valley, and walked up to the hill, the South Side. But it's interesting you should pose that question because as a young boy, and I don't know what my age is, I can go, the records would show I'm standing in the corner of Astor, Elizabeth Avenue. There's a clock there, there's a funeral home. And all of a sudden, that cars driving up there, 10, 15 cars. As a young boy, what's it? And women got out all dressed in white. And they were carrying suitcases. And now I'm really just dumbfounded and what's going on? And they all went in the hotel. And I had to ask a grown-up, excuse me, sir, what's going on over there? And they said they're the angels, Father, divine angels. And they brought suitcases. I think that I even remember the amount that he told me, this is 100 years ago, I'm 100 years old, $400 and some thousand to buy the Riviera Hotel. And I remember even more because then I learned because it was purchased by Father Vaughn, I could go there and say, Peace, brother, and get a meal for I think with 15, 25 cents. Peace, brother, get that bad, I had bad apple. I never had good apple. I was like, what, Sidney Poitier. Like, Sidney Poitier, he had bad apple. I had bad apple. Peace, brother, and I could get a haircut. Right, down in the basement, right there. It interests me that an African-American man purchased that hotel for cash. And as we sit here in the year 2023,
Yes, sir.
I lost 1 year.
Yes, sir.
It's still there.
But the significance of it and the history of it is not prevalent, it's not posted, and it's not spoke of.
I think they're fighting now in city council meeting to give it historical status.
It should.
Not only that, not only that. When we were doing some things at PSE&G, believe it or not, and this was in the early '90s. We took a couple of rooms there, PSE&G, to get you out of the corporate mess, just to do the project. And so we had a couple of rooms there. And that's the way you can't claim that you was at 80 Park Place being disturbed. And they set us up in that historical hotel. And I being clergy, and then being just a history buff, I understood Father Divine and those that broke off from him, like Mother Hatchet and all of them. And as a kid, I was part of a drill team called the Ambassadors, and they would go out to Detroit, have a big parade, and we had won not only the state championship but the national championship, and so they put us on 2 buses and took us out to Detroit that we may march in their parade in front of their angels. And Father Divine, them women would walk and march in that white until they'd fall out.
They drove from Pennsylvania. I think the headquarters was on Germantown Avenue in Pennsylvania. the Worcester Wood. I had family members, but they came from Germantown, Pennsylvania.
Wow.
Germantown Avenue.
Wow.
And they were dedicated. I mean, can you imagine cars, women, all white, suitcases full of cash? Hello? Hello? That's the way they did it in those days. Donation. Hello, church. You got to talk to him now. Work on tithes. How the tithes coming, Reverend?
Yeah, you're gonna laugh. We was in the diner one night, my wife and I. We're having dinner. In walks Sharpe. He's driving the Bentley because I knew they were gonna get him then. Once they saw the Bentley, they driving the Bentley. Comes up and he says, "Tithes must be good. You eating in here." I never forget it. About 92, 93. So I said to the waitress, I said, "Don't bring me his bill." And he never let me limit it. But that's what people do. We've lost that. We've lost that.
Well, being that you all brought that up, being that the country has gone through the COVID and things of this nature, and you all have lived through so many diabolical, massive changes that have affected American life, how is it different what we've just experienced the last 3 years to what you all experienced with, I think it was the measles and things of that adversary?
Let me say this. COVID has given the excuse for us not to produce.
When you say us, what do you
Us.
mean?
I'm going to say the black church. And also, it has given a rise to a move on gentrification. A lot of black churches had mortgages. Church closed, no source of income. A lot of black churches had contracts with preachers. COVID or not, preacher gets paid. And so for 2 years, if you had $150,000 in the bank, it's gone. Even though you weren't there, the pipes didn't freeze, you had some type of heat on your PSE&G. See, people don't look at total cost. And so now you don't have a 501c3, and the government has changed the rules on even that. If you want to get federal money, you need an EQ number. That's the new thing. Make a long story short, a lot of folks that look like us did not plan well, did not think through. And so COVID allowed folks in Newark, because who owns Newark now? They contacted me, Sharpe, and said, we want to buy your church and its lots. Why? Well, we know y'all can't make it wrong. And I thank God, as Sharpe said, for good leadership that was around me. We went into the pandemic. Paradise doesn't have a mortgage. You know, we don't have a mortgage. I worked for a great corporation, so I didn't have to milk. My daddy, again, country man, 6th grade education, PhD in life, said you can't milk a pole cow.
I think it gave us a new word to think about, and I didn't know how to spell it. Quagmire.
Yes.
We didn't know quagmire, Qagmi. We didn't know what to do. Society didn't know what to do. The question came up, who can you trust? Who can you believe? Do you believe the scientific world? Do you believe Dr. Fauci or all the other? But you see, Big Pharma stepped in now.
Yeah.
This is about money. Come on, folks. It's about making money. Who can you trust? Who you can believe? How do you have doctors telling you, wear a mask, and then you go turn on the television, there's 85,000 people at a football game not wearing a mask. There's 18,000 at Madison Square Garden cheering for their basketball team not wearing a mask. Who can you trust? It became almost what do you call it? A fiscal question. Who do you believe? Big pharma, medical, quagmire. We really didn't know what to do.
And let me give you what's going on right now, Sharpe.
All right.
Right now, you get a phone call, and everybody knows we're located on 15th and 100. We understand they're targeting. It's target marketing, the black church. We know that for 2 years you're probably behind in your mortgage. We know the people are not returning. We know this is what they say they know. And we want to buy your building, your parking lot and properties. So I asked the question, for what? We're going to tear down the anchor institution of the black community. If you go to the little church that was on 14th and Huntington, it ain't there no more. They couldn't afford to catch up with anybody, couldn't afford to pay their mortgage. So you sell. They knocked the church down, put some houses there, market rate in Newark. They said, y'all got 8-10 lots. We can build a lot of houses here. So I said, why would you tear down? I said, well, Paradise is paid for. They said, oh. I said, Paradise has been renovated. They said, oh, y'all only been there 28 years. I said, yeah, but God has blessed us. I said, and then I learned quickly online and Givelify and Cash App. I learned those things quick. I said, and then when we could open, I had somebody that was quite benevolent and didn't even look like us, but because we had helped folks along the way in times, and we helped the water crisis, we had the machine to sanitize. Yeah. So we get sanitized after every service. And I inquired, and that's part of the gentrification. It's what's going on right now, and we saw, and Sharpe, you definitely understand this, what's going on in some of the large apartment units here. If I want to turn them into condos, it takes 3 years. But if I can get the tenants to move out and let it get rat infested while I'm getting tax relief, they move out, I can do it in 1 year. It's gentrification. And if you remove the anchor institution, since this is Black History Month, and we're talking about Black history, the anchor institution, the other thing here, that has got me messed up. Everybody knows that. I don't know why, Sharpe. Somebody said they trust me. I sit on the community board of UMD&J. Now, a few years ago, Sharpe, and you probably knew this, somebody tried to cut a deal to make it a Cleveland clinic. Found out about it, Newark, North Jersey, raised sane. People backed up because it made them look bad, and they weren't going to get elected again. They got a $1.2 billion project going on that they're going to rebuild the campus. They've got $600 million in the hopper already. And I ask simple questions because being when we built PAC, I'm there from PSE&G, black community, black history, there were no major black contractors because we can't afford the $25 million performance bond. I asked the question, how many blacks, not even major contractors, but what about architecture consulting firms? There's money in the hopper in our community, but we can't get a piece of that pie.
Always. You care to speak on that? How you was able to get such a bigger sliver when you were in power?
Well,
for the city of Newark? Because those of us, including myself, that got government jobs, it was mandated that a certain amount of individuals that were qualified be hired first.
Well, it goes back to the leadership question again that we talked about. Let's go back. It always goes back. Donald Tucker in the city of Newark created an ordinance, 25% of whatever had to be minorities. and all due respect to public service and Bishop Jepthro, they should send the corporate leaders to the city council meeting to address these issues. And they would get up and say, well, I'm from 550 Broad Street and 6th floor, and Don would say, I didn't ask you that. Where do you live? And he would always do it.
Yes, he would.
They would leave and get drunk, go out by his head downtown. Because what he was saying, I don't want to hear about your corporate office. I want to know where you live, because then you understand our issues of what it's all about. But, and by the way, his ordinance created problems for the mayor. I would call corporations in, federal dollars, and I said, oh, we have an ordinance that says it's got to be sure. Well, we're not going to do it. We're not going to do it. We're going to ignore New York's ordinance. And Donald would come up to me and say, just tell them this, Sharpe. They can get some or none. I'm thinking what I'm saying.
Yes, some or none.
Some or none. If you don't want to share the pie in New York, you don't have no pie in New York. I mean, he was tough, like that, adamant on that.
Yeah.
Minority set aside. We had an ordinance, not Sharpe James, the council, the leadership, the Bessie, the Gale, the Don Bradley. They would go out on a work site and count.
Yes, they would.
How many minorities? And if you didn't have that number,
shut it down.
Shut it down. Yeah, shut it down. So it goes back to what we saying.
About
almost
leadership.
Everything deals with what?
Leadership. And partnership.
I'm going to say this.
And partnership.
I'm going to say this. I have to say this here and now. I'm going to switch. And that's this here. I would like to speak of, again, I'm going back to the importance of knowing your history and where you come from. Your most precious name is your last name. Florida boy, Virginia boy. Can you explain to those that have come above the Western Dixie line how important that was for you all with your family name?
Well, again, Virginia.
Explain about Virginia, and you didn't have to go to Alabama.
Right. No, you could do it here in New Jersey. As a matter of fact, I can trace one of my great aunts back to 1708 because I've got some nieces that are brilliant and they did this. And slavery, and so I understand why the males and whatnot, but I still have 13 acres of inherited land, which is 1 mile from the James River. So I wonder why my last name is James, in a place called Powhatan County. That was the Indian chief that John Smith dealt with. And I went to Pocahontas Elementary. That was not a Disney character, but she was a real person in Virginia. I know these things. I know that because my daddy refused to get up on a sawdust pile and pack it down because colored boys then, in the early 1900s, they went to about the 6th grade, but when they were big enough, they got a job. So at 13, my daddy is in a sawmill. And what they would do with the colored boys, they would put them up on a steam shovel. And the sawdust piles would be a story or 2 stories high, and they would pack the sawdust down. But if you fell down through the sawdust, by the time they got you out, you had suffocated. My grandfather told my daddy, don't work the sawdust pile. And the story goes that when he told Daddy to get in the shovel to work the sawdust pile, he said, no, sir. And I don't have to tell you how that went. You didn't say no in the early 1900s to a white man. And as a result, he sicked his hound on my father. My father was running toward the woods, so the story goes. But he always carried an old pocket knife. And when the dog hit him, he started hitting the dog and said that the words was, and I'm just going to say it, y'all, somebody get that nigger, he going to kill my dog. and they had to get my father. He spent the night in the woods, from I understand, and whatnot, and had to get my father to my great uncle in New York City. That's how he got north, because they were going to lynch him, because they sent the dog on him, and he cut up the dog, although he was bit up. And then when you come north, I had a full ride to Boston University, but my father couldn't afford the books and room and board, and PSE&G didn't have any colored working for him. And so I got called in, graduated class Einstein. I got called in because they were looking for the best and brightest, and said, if you read meters during the day, we'll send you to Rutgers in the evening. And so I would go out in the 60s, knock on a door and say, gas man, public service. I got locked up in Fair Lawn, Glen Rock, Patterson, Hawthorne, Wayne, you name it. I got locked up, gun put to the back of my head. I'm reading a meter through a thing. And be told to my face, you know you have a white man's job. You have a white man's job. And so when you ask about, and what does the name mean, and I think that's what's lost in it. I remember as a boy, Sharpe, you're gonna laugh at this. In the country, because my last grade in Virginia was the 6th grade, and because they closed all the colored schools in Virginia in '62 rather than integrate them, and so my daddy moved us. My daddy moved us so I could be educated. But I went to school and got in a fight with Anthony Smothers on the school bus, and then you went to the colored school. And Miss Martin, who would be considered the principal today, if you fought on the bus, you rolled up your pants legs, she would come to your classroom. And corporal punishment was the order of the day, with a cat of nine tails. And
lineage in Newark is not really known, because like lineage, one of the most successful housing projects in Newark is New Communities in Fatherland. Last night they must have had a busload of people at the city council meeting talking about New Community Fatherland. But the thing I want to bring up is that there was a Joe Cheney field.
That's where it came from. Come on,
When you Father Leonard has won every award you
right,
can name.
But they gave nothing to Joe
Award,
Cheney.
Senate Award, you just never name them. But Joe Cheney field was an African American Newark leader, walking with a cane, who gave him the vision, who gave him the insight and worked with him to create a new community. His daughter is who? Gail Cheney Field Jenkins. Maybe that's why she keeps that. Gail Cheney Field Jenkins.
Because Joe Cheney Field, anybody that came to Newark and wants to know its history.
And was Mary Smith.
Right.
Mary Smith's part of that. Earl Harris, son, leadership. Ron Rice, leadership. It's a whole lot of lineage, that word Lineage, in the city of Newark, that has created this groundswell of leadership, of involvement, of commitment.
So what do you tell the young people today that are not involved?
Well, you know,
that's my question.
That's very brand, because, you know, it's interesting. That's today's issue. Project Ready, they just announced a program trying to get the school board election numbers to go up. You know, the last number, 3%. People don't realize the largest budget in the city of Newark is not the city, it's the school board. And yet, only 3% came out to vote in the last election.
But so do they know that?
That's a good point.
But let me say this. You know when election day is.
Yes.
We grew up, my grandmama couldn't wait to vote. My grandmama couldn't wait to vote. And to finish that story, 3 weeks later, my grandmama sees Miss Martin in church. And she said, Miss Nanny, and she said Miss Martin, because school teachers were They were gods in the community. She said, I had to get your grandboy. He was fighting on the bus.
Wrong thing to hear.
Wrong thing to do. 3 weeks later,
Well,
I get home.
He's brought the biggest issue. How do you get people involved? What have you? So what? Everyone talks about voter registration. Keep putting them all about. Give me $5 and I'll go knock on
Souls
doors.
on the polls and all that.
The issue is voter education to get them to want to come out, to want to vote, to want to participate,
And you talked about name and heritage. I get home ready for bed that night. We had a tin tub, and grandma says this. Let me look at your neck and ears. You standing there in your little drawers and t-shirt, and she said, "Well, Mr. Joe Lewis." Mr. Joe Lewis. She said, "Yeah, tell me you like the fight." First of all, Mr. is wrong. Joe Lewis, you're in trouble. And she wears me out. And I asked her, I said, "Grandma, why?" She said, "'Cause you shame this name. If somebody has to speak to you, there was pride in who you were, whose boy was you, whose girl. Sharpe, you know you couldn't go see no girl without saying, whose boy is you?"
Absolutely.
One vote can make a difference.
Come on, somebody.
And there's so many stories where Texas would not be Texas today.
Right.
The Alamo and all over, because one person didn't vote, what have you.
Right.
Voting is important. People have died for the right to vote.
My question is here. I told them to just let it run. Why was it of such importance for our forefathers, the generation in front of us, whereas now the descendants of those don't feel they owe anything?
Well, what you just said, though, if you don't know your history, you're bound to repeat the mistakes of the past. In South Africa, they lined up for 20 miles to vote. 80 degrees temperature. People had arthritis, kyphosis, you name it. People couldn't read or write. The ballot, and I have it hanging on my wall at home. They went down the ballot. Blonde eyes, small nose, small lip. No, that's not him. Kurt, that's the Kurt. No, freckle face, chocolate looking, big nose, thick lips. There he is, Nelson Mandela.
So
they voted by picture.
Right.
So
They voted by picture.
So what does ballot of the bullet mean to this generation?
Let me say this, since we're talking about history. New Jersey, number 2 slave port in the country. New Jersey, slave state, last state to accept the Emancipation Proclamation. New Jersey, the theory that went around the world that black and Native American minds were inferior to the European mind. Princeton University, New Jersey, governor that has his name on bridges, whom this current governor, and the reason he got rid of Woodrow Wilson's desk, because some of us raised hell. Woodrow Wilson was a card-carrying member of the Ku Klux Klan, and was one of the biggest racists that ever went to Washington, a transplant from Virginia. New Jersey, State Police, where I still serve as chaplain, was born out of the heart of a group of Pennsylvania sharpshooters that believed that the Native Americans across the Delaware Water Gap and the blacks, they had a group of sharpshooters because they worked the mines there, and they believed that they could, in 1919, they believed that with a good rifle they could shoot the eye off a nigger. And 2 years later, our state police were born. Not one Not one African American until
When
1960.
when did the first African American come to state police?
In 1965, but he got in 1968.
When did the first female come?
1975. And right now, Sharpe, right now, there's only 10 African American females in the New Jersey State Police, and the highest ranking is a lieutenant with a PhD that teaches at Howard.
And hold on, man. Not by accident.
Yeah, come on now.
You have to have a college degree
now.
to become now.
Now.
When African Americans began to join the state police, began to get, they said, "Oh, we're gonna change the qualification." You now have to be a college graduate. Think about that. It's all what? To control who gets what, who gets economic development, or what have you. By the way, Preacher, I've just been looking on the screen as we close this program. You're going to have a disclaimer that Bishop James and Sharpe James is not related. I think that's a part of the family that we've been looking for some money that they escaped. We don't know where they are, Mississippi, Alabama, Virginia, but they ain't paid their dues.
Well, let me say this here. Make sure I point this right. The book here by the Honorable Mayor Sharpe James has to be published. This is one book.
The new one.
And this is the newest book.
April the 1st, breakfast meeting, Robert Treat Hotel.
I'm getting mine today. I don't care what.
Now I have it today.
Also for you all, we have to put out there they're not related biologically.
Yeah.
But
that side of the family owes some money.
But Bishop James, I'm pretty sure he has a book in the making too.
Yes, I do.
But what I would like to say to both of you gentlemen in closing is that on my show, I try to make people conscious of the people that are here, the pathfinders, the forerunners that stood up against injustices in all walks of life. It has nothing to do, because this is Black History Month, we have to emphasize some things that have happened to us, but it's essential that we all are going to have to come together. And I have found that the pandemic, it taught you that you had to deal with yourself first. That's something that I have to get you all to speak on now, because it's hard for young people, being that they now have everything on a hand, computer, phone, to deal with themselves. You have something to say about that?
One of the things that I'm seeing, and these are with so-called college graduates, educated young people, they don't write well at all. Everything is abbreviation. You can't do a term paper.
Please don't.
And text messages. Many of them, and they respect because of who I am, and I've been around with their parents, but they come from a different thought process, and history is not important to them, and so therefore they don't understand they're bound to repeat the mistakes. They don't reverence the master chess political player here. They don't master that, and they never will, because they cannot get his mindset. Martin said some stuff, we like the speeches, but Martin says some stuff. And by the way, Bill Watley, who was the pastor of St. James, Bill Watley wrote the first book on Martin Luther King. A lot of people don't know that. Bill wrote the first book.
We have to stop that. Got to get this in. Martin Luther King came to Newark, New Jersey the week before he was assassinated. Can you both speak of that for Black history, and we'll close on you all speaking.
I'm going to give it to
what
Sharpe.
you saw.
And you went to Reverend Madison Church.
That's
Reverend
correct.
Madison was one of the few
That would
See,
let him
most
in.
people believe Dr. Martin Luther King was a hero. Dr. Martin King. many people called Dr. Martin Luther King Uncle Tom.
Didn't they turn their back on
Yeah,
him?
I was gonna
Black
say,
church.
they said, don't come here. We're going
Black
to lose
church.
our money. We're going to lose our dollars. Stay away. He was turned away. The reason he came to Newark was because of Reverend Mapson, who had befriended him in the National Baptist
Convention.
Convention.
That put
and
him out.
invited him.
What was his name again?
Reverend Mapson.
Mapson.
They put the National Baptist Convention put Martin out because they thought he was too progressive.
Put him out?
That's how the not American Baptist. Oh God, Progressive Baptist was born.
What's the difference?
Not a whole lot.
That's
Not a whole lot. Okay. But again, they wanted to distance themselves from Martin. Martin came to Newark, Jersey City, and Patterson.
Yes.
And Queen, and let's give credit where
Is
credit
that where he got
due.
stabbed?
Queen of Angels also. Queen of Angels opened the door for him. Welcome, Martin. But the key was Reverend Mapson, who respected and loved our leader.
Yeah. What church was he from or pastor of? Do you all know?
Ebenezer. You saying? No, you're saying who?
Reverend
Mapson.
Mapson, yes. Mount Calvary.
Mount Calvary
Church.
Baptist.
Mount Calvary?
Yeah.
Hawthorne Avenue.
And yep.
Yeah.
And what? Seymour
Right down
Avenue?
the street from
Yeah.
Zion.
Yeah, you
right
got
down
it right.
From Zion.
Yeah.
What?
And
The history.
Mapson, because when I first became a pastor, Mapson was the former moderator of Newark, North Jersey Association, and I won't call any names, but we were there for the district meeting, and Mapson said that one of his trustees had died. I was a young preacher, and Mapson said that the service would be in the basement because he was going to bury his trustees. And the new young group of preachers there and said, well, we got Jepthro to do this. I guess you know when Mapson got finished, I preached in the basement. I mean, they had that kind of power and clout and respect. That's something that's lost. And to quote Martin says you can't have paralysis while doing the analysis. And I think that's one of the things that made Sharpe James probably, if not the greatest, one of the greatest mayors in this country.
No politics.
No.
I might run again. I might run again, and they won't let me run.
So,
the people who I gave jobs to, the people who borrowed money from me, the people I spent $200 said, "Don't let Sharpe run, please." Keep
analysis.
You know what's funny?
Because Sharpe, while doing the analysis, never became paralyzed, and that's what's happening.
African American men kept me from running. You don't think the city clerk woke up one morning and said, "Don't accept his petition"?
It's our own people.
He was called into a room, and don't you let Sharpe James.
Because everybody knew you were the one.
But you know what's funny I have to say to our audience is that I hope they see the realism, the liveness, there's nothing edited, and that you both are stand up and approachable. We always speak of in Black History Month and history per se of this person way over there and this person way over there. No, I was taught, and I feel the importance to let it be known, reach out to those that you can touch, that you can hear, that you can understand, and they'll show you the way. Because it's most important. It's sure to look through history and see Charles Drew and all these people, but you have real icons in your immediate vicinity of where you live that are still soldiering to make it a better world. I thank you all for having you all in my life and helping so many of us that if we didn't have someone as a steward, or as they would say, a shepherd.
Remember that movie? Remember that book, Cornbread Earl and Me?
Yep.
Once you help people, once you care for them, once you give them their fix, then they feel they don't need you
no more
anymore, and they cut you out.
Is that a part of humanitarian trait that you forget those
Crabs in a basket.
that help you to get
Let me say this.
Crabs in a basket.
But you remember those right now, but you forget those from the past.
You have to have integrity.
I'll let you know. It's a reality.
It's a reality.
The very people that you help will be the very people that step on you, bury you, and don't recognize it.
And let me say this, but it's a thing called integrity.
That's another word.
And too many of us have lost that.
What about consciousness?
The people, I had somebody go in their pocket and say to me, "This is my conscience."
The almighty dollar.
The almighty dollar. But let me tell you this: what I say to people, I said, the day they put you in the ground, nobody's gonna do anything. There's a joke about this man, if I've got a minute, and he mistreats his family, and he's got stocks and bonds everywhere, and he says to his wife, "If I die before you put all my money in that coffin." And sure enough, he goes to work this day, drops dead. They find out that he's worth millions. The wife says, "Put this little house up for sale. We're going to go to a penthouse until it sells, and we find a new place," dresses the kids, puts them away big time. They get there, and they're about to close the coffin for the last time, and a daughter pulls on and says, "Mama, you know what Daddy said? Daddy said we better put some money in there because he's going to come back to get us." She tells the undertaker, "Wait a minute." Takes a checkbook out, writes a check, drops it in the coffin, say, "You can close it now." She said, "When he cashed that, I'll worry about giving him the rest." And that's the reality. There are some values that money will pay for your funeral.
Talk about George Branch then.
Oh, my friend.
George Branch.
My friend, Buddy Gee.
That Buddy Gee, people say, "Well, George didn't graduate from Harvard or Yale." Thank you.
He's smart as.
He didn't go here, there. Maybe could even read great books, what have you. But he was loved by the people, loved by his constituents,
and build things for the people.
And he always said, "Never look down on a person unless you're going to help pick him up."
Because you're down there with him.
Register on you.
You're down there with him.
Never look down on a person unless you're going to reach down
to help
and
him up.
pick him up.
And he started things in the city for seniors.
Go ahead.
For seniors. For seniors.
But you know what? And people don't realize the history you talk about. Cory Booker moved to Newark and picked the Central Ward and picked George Branch to run again.
Yes, he did.
Stanford University, Rhodes Scholar, handsome, pearly teeth. I love to say people got good teeth and I got bad teeth. All good hair. I love the people got good hair because I got bad hair. I mean, a matinee idol. Guess what? It took a runoff for him to defeat George Branch. And let me give you the conclusion. I'm at fault because I had just built Society Hill in the Central Ward, where they're sitting in their big chairs in the clubhouse and the swimming pool over there. And they thought they were in Boca Raton. So the guy who wore his hat sideways, Buddy Gee, he didn't appeal to them then. Rhodes Scholar did. Stanford University did. 300 votes separated the community giver, the community activist, the one people love, George Branch, from a Rhodes Scholar.
Heart and soul. Central Ward, heart and soul.
Not only that, youth programs. Not just youth programs.
While we speak of that,
Cotton Hill,
while we speak of that, we got to get this in for Black History Month. Dennis Westbrook.
Dennis.
Lord have mercy.
The dashiki.
Let's give him a little something on him.
Amiri Baraka,
is he still around?
Senior coming up the side of the council. Now look, hey Dennis, this is what we want. This is what we want. And Dennis would lobby. He filibustered. Hey Dennis, we gotta go home tonight. It's 12 o'clock at night, and he would be filibustering in behalf of the community, what have you. real people.
Right. Carolyn Kelly Shabazz.
Oh, please. Now,
Black
get on
history.
now.
Carolyn Kelly Shabazz.
Yeah, that's a good point.
First African American woman boxing commissioner.
First class championship. Hello.
And friend. And I'm going to say this whether you like it or not. People said, Bishop, y'all gave out so much water, y'all would give 1,000, 2,000 turkeys. Karen Kelly Shabazz hooked me up with Don King.
Oh.
And so Don King.
She brought him here to Newark many times to feed the poor. The Bible says, what you do for the least of my people, you do for me.
Come on.
Carolyn would bring him Custer Avenue, Irvine Turner Boulevard. What happened?
15th Avenue and 100th Street. Tractor trailer pull up full of
2,500 turkeys. And then he would bring some of them hotel giants. I forgot who loved him.
Yeah.
He would bring them here.
And when he he brought boxing back. Yeah. When they brought
Mulberry and Edison.
He brought boxing back.
Oh,
and I told some folks, because he said he couldn't get a preacher to pray over him coming back. That's when he bought the bomber from Jersey City, the Polish guy. So I was part of that. And talking to Don King, if you didn't know who you were, you'd be confused, because Poochie, he'd be talking about this, then Sharpe was saying about the hair. And so I thought the book was over here when the bishop said over there. You said, what? That was Don King.
We loved Don King.
Yes.
He was a giver of period. So I take him to a local restaurant, no names mentioned, and Carolyn Kelly and I and Don King having breakfast, and he looks around, about 20 people in the restaurant, 20. But he said, bring me the bill for all of these people.
That's him.
He said, I'm paying for these. He didn't put the number, but I'm paying for these 20 people. So about 3 hours later, the owner of the restaurant brings us a bill for $2,000. And Carolyn Kelly just said, wait a minute, Chuck. How 20 people, Bill, get $2,000? He said, feed the 20 people in there, not whatever you want for your weekly income or whatever. So I turned and said, Don, I apologize. He said, told his son, go out to the car and get my what do you call brief bag? What do you call it, gym bag? Brought it in. And here's $500 tip. So then we got outside, and I'm still apologizing. Carrie said, no, Sean, don't make a scene. We'll never come back again. You hear that? I'll pay. You can, wait a second, trick me one time, it's on you. Trick me a second time, it's on me. He said, we just won't eat here again, Chuck. Yeah. But he would not lower himself to get into an argument, to dispute. He knew he was being abused. That taught me something. You know you're being abused. You can act like a fool, act crazy. He said, Tom, no. Joseph, go get my duffel bag.
I had a few good bosses at public service that didn't necessarily look like me, and one in particular, Charles Bellotti. Charles Bellotti, if the late Reverend West was here, he loved Levin, so Levin could do anything and nothing would happen from PS. Charlie Bellotti said this, Jethro, don't ever get in a pissing contest with a skunk. He said, because everybody knows how the skunk smells, but once he pees on you, what's the difference?
Oh.
Well, we have covered vast, broad, and wide. And I'm so very fortunate to have you all in my presence. And you all have been instrumental to so many of us that have never told you thank you. I'm here to say thank you for them. And that's from the heart. We're going to conclude this show on a grand, great note and speak of the first African-American councilman in the city of Newark, and his name, which I'm named after, Irvin Turner. Irvin Turner, from what I've read and from what I've been told, was a very caring man, a God-fearing man, but he was a common man because he was an approachable man. Not only that, he understood the importance of having relationships with not only the same epidermis, same color of skin, but mostly of your heart, your mind, and what you are trying to treat your neighbor best you possibly could. As they say, you treat your enemies well too. You be conscious of them, but you treat them well. So I say that to say in closing, we as a people, as Martin Luther King said, we'll get there. We might not get there together, but if everyone does their own little part, it will make a difference. And on the notes to close the show, I'm going to give both of my guests their opportune time to close it out. So after Bishop James speaks, he'll be the last one to speak. As I always say, before we can love all people, we must first love ourselves. Thank you. Go ahead.
Well, remember that I'm a product standing on the shoulders of Ken Gibson, Earl Howard, Donald Tucker, and all the others of the Black and Puerto Rican Convention. And what better way to close than say, Mi casa es su casa, familia, which was saying, we're family. We're family. It's about us, not Sharpe, James, not I. The strongest word in the dictionary is we. And the weakest word in the dictionary is I.
And one of the things that I was taught, there is no I in team. There is no I in team. And we're a team. And one of the things about teams, they set goals. They just don't give even the person that brings, doesn't play a lick, but just brings the team water, the person that cleans the cleats, the person that gives out the towels, they get a ring. In our days, Sharpe, you got a letter to go on your sweater.
Bossy. Hey, Malcolm X from Southside, not Malcolm X. Bingo, 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 bingo. That's the lingo.
Yes, sir.
Southside High.
And so I've learned that it takes a team to win. They may give an individual award to someone that leads a team. You know, in the case of the Super Bowl, the quarterback usually gets the award, but every team member gets a ring. And then also remember this: every team member just made more than they had just for making it. And so sometimes when you think about I, understand you can't spell team with I.
On that note, we will end this segment for Black History Month, which has been so special. I will see you next time. As I always say to you, stay blessed, stay focused, stay tough. Good night.